Blood of the Archon, Chapter 7, The Cabin at the Edge of the Woods. Aethel was cold. By Astrea and Tyr, it was cold. The Isles could get cold, of course, but fuck, Aethel was cold. Percy made a mental note to move somewhere up north, maybe Orcanum. It was supposed to be warm there, wasn't it? He hugged himself tightly, teeth chattering violently. He needed to find shelter, and soon. He shot a look up at the sky, white with the swirling snow around him. Fuck, goddess, if you're still in the rescuing mood, I could really use an assist. He wasn't answered by anything except the whistling of the wind. He didn't expect to be answered, of course, but he bitterly wondered what Tessia had done to deserve Tyr's mercy. Probably not killing a young man. Probably not that. Percy felt his stomach churn when he thought of the boy. His blood sullied on his clothes, his gaunt face skeletal. Wait, when did he look like that? As Percy's blade pulsed warmly, his head throbbed. He thought about something else. A couple of hours passed, but they felt like days in the freezing mountain. Percy was starting to think he had escaped the Legion only to die in the cold when he caught sight of something through the snow. It was a light, a gently flickering flame. As he drew closer, he was able to make out a shape, something brown and large. A house? Gods, maybe Astrea really had heard his prayers. He felt his stomach fill with butterflies. Hope. He hadn't felt that in a long while. But wait. Yes, he was still covered in blood. That could be problematic. Percy dropped his knapsack into the snow and grabbed a shirt. His pants and cloak were dark enough that the blood couldn't be seen, but his white shirt was far from it. He briskly unclasped his cloak and laid it gently in the snow. He then pulled the clean shirt over the soiled one, then donned his cloak once more. His face was likely still covered in blood, but he didn't want to risk trying to clean himself off with the snow. Letting out a shaky breath, he approached the house, walked to the door, and knocked. Hello? Is there anyone there? I've been out in the cold. If I could just have a few minutes next to your fire, I could... The door swung open, and he was met with a middle-aged woman. She was short and lithe and had a pale pink eyes and the hair the color of flour. By the look of her ears and the intricate tattoos on her face, she was a fair folk elf. She cursed in Elvish, shaking her head. Spirits, you're a mess. Come in, come in. Hearthmother knows I won't leave someone out in the cold. The Hearthmother was the elven spirit of fire and warmth, if Percy remembered correctly. She was one of the elven spirits that was a manifestation of Astrea, according to the Covenant of Light. Percy nodded in relief and entered the small home. It was quaint and filled with herbs and animal hides. There were also multiple different bows displayed on the wall. The elf must have been a hunter. The home had a comforting feel to it, like the house itself was inviting him to kick off his boots and rest a while. Well, have a seat. Take off those dirty boots of yours. The elf put her hands on her hips and gestured to a chair next to the fire. Percy nodded gratefully and obeyed the strange woman's command. He removed his cloak and hung it over the back of the chair before sitting down. He stretched his toes and rubbed his hands together over the fire. He let out a pleased sigh and leaned back. Thank you, miss. She shook her head and chuckled. It's just Karya, if you please. No miss necessary. Nice to meet you. He stopped. He couldn't use his real name. There were people looking for Percival Larkdrake. He couldn't be Percy anymore either. He needed something different. He needed a fresh start. What's wrong, dear? Wildcat got your tongue? He shook his head. No, sorry, He blinked for a moment, and said the first word that came to his mind. Raven. He thought back to the birds that used to gather on the trees outside his window back in Edelheim, how he envied their ability to fly away whenever they wished. Raven? Karya's brow cocked skeptically. Strange name for a human. Then she shrugged. But considering my own parents wanted to call me Nathaniel, who am I to judge? She laughed jovially. What brings you out here? We're quite far from any civilization. If you don't mind me saying, you look rather ragged. He chuckled and nodded. I was part of a merchant caravan heading to Sanctuary. We were attacked by wolves, and I got separated from the rest of my group. He didn't like how easily the lie came to him. Oh, you poor dear. Well, take as long as you like here. Spirits know I have supplies to share. It felt strange having this woman treating him so normally. At Sanctuary, they treated him like an animal, a murderer, which he supposed he now was. Before that, he was treated like something fragile, a porcelain doll too delicate to be taken out of its glass case. It felt nice to not be Percival the Larkdrake, heir to Edelheim, or Percival the murderer, and just to be treated as Percy, or Raven now, he supposed. A small part of him wanted to stay forever, to live with Karya and help her however he was able, but a louder part of him knew he had to keep moving. He wasn't far enough away from Sanctuary yet, and though his tracks had been covered by the blizzard, any sufficiently skilled hound could track his scent out here. He might be able to stay for a few hours, though, at least until the blizzard died down. Thank you, Karya. I don't know how I can repay your kindness. She waved her hand dismissively. No payment necessary. It's just nice to have a conversation with someone aside from that old wolfhound for once. Percival? No. Raven? He'd have to get used to using that name in his head if he wanted to use it convincingly with other people. Hadn't seen a dog in the small house, or anything resembling a dog for that matter. He was about to ask Karya about it, but she changed the subject. Would you like some tea? I just put the kettle on. The kettle whistled, and Raven nodded. Raven's entire body felt like it was wrapped in a warm blanket, floating on a bed of downy feathers. He sighed and cuddled closer to the warmth, not wanting to open his eyes for fear of breaking the drowsy spell that had been placed upon him. Eventually, though, the warmth faded slightly, and he opened his eyes. It was dark, far darker than he thought it should have been. He frowned and pushed the blanket off. It was his cloak, and it was slightly moist. He took his eyes away for a moment to adjust, but once they did, his confusion only increased. The house was empty, completely empty. The fire was dead, and it didn't look like there had ever been a fire in the first place. The only furniture he could see was the chair he was seated on. How long had he been asleep? He stood up, stumbling slightly as he did so. He sniffed and frowned. Something smelled like meat, like rotting meat. It was wet and sweet and rancid. He was shaking. Why was he shaking? Why couldn't he remember falling asleep? Karya? He called out weakly. No answer came, just silence and the wind whistling through the drafty roof. He swallowed and took a step forward. There was a kitchen farther into the house. He considered maybe if Karya would be there. Instinctively, he grabbed his blade, the warmth of the hilt filling him with enough self-assurance to continue. Hello? He peeked into the kitchen, but just like the rest of the house, it was devoid of life. But it wasn't empty. In the corner of the room, its head cracked open, stood the long, dead body of a woman. She was far too decayed for anyone to make out any distinguishing figures, except for the point of her one remaining ear. The corpse's finger twitched, and Raven acted instinctively, severing the thing's head with one clean slice. It didn't move again. Raven let out a shaky breath, and then the house seemed to flicker. One moment it was the dark shack, the next it was the warm cottage he remembered, and then it was back to the shack. He looked down at his shirt. He was covered in blood again. He spun around, frantically looking for the source, but when he turned back, he was standing over Karya's bed, holding her decapitated head in his hand. He screamed and dropped it. It landed with a wet crack on the floor, and Raven stumbled back. His knuckles were white as he clutched his blade, and it pulsed dully. He seeming to hum slightly, a tune he couldn't quite pinpoint. It soothed him, reminding him of a lullaby his mother had sung to him. It felt familiar somewhat. Had he heard it before? He almost forgot the carnage before him as he hummed along, but was quickly brought back to reality by the sound of a door being slammed open by the force of the wind. Raven jumped, then glanced back at Karya. He felt sick, but paradoxically hungry as well. A low grumble in his stomach communicated that he hadn't had a proper meal in days, maybe weeks. As Raven sheathed his blade and walked out the room back to the kitchen, he moved through the house like a ghost, blood-covered fingers gently glancing across Karya's pristine counters. He wondered what whoever found this place would think of the scene. He almost laughed, imagining their confusion. The elf didn't have much food that would last a trip, but the flatbread and dried venison would have to be enough. He stuffed his bag with all he could carry. Then he caught sight of a small bag of coins. He knew he should feel bad, evil even, but every time he turned his mind too far, his sword sang to him and soothed him. It wasn't right. He knew it wasn't right, but he felt nothing. Not anything, really. Karya wouldn't have any use for the gold. He needed it more than a dead woman. He pushed away his apprehension and grabbed it. Despite the weather, when Raven stepped outside, he felt warm and renewed. He felt strong. He didn't question it. He didn't want to. He was fine with believing it was another one of Estrella's blessings. He knew he didn't deserve it.